Dr. Majed al-Ansari, advisor to the Prime Minister of Qatar and the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for granting us this interview. We are now in Passover times, which is centered on the concept of freedom. After more than 200 days in captivity, thus Qatar makes every effort in order to reach an agreement for the release of the hostages.
Well, since 2006, Qatar has played a pivotal role after it was asked by the United States to establish a channel of communication with Hamas in de-escalation and mediation between both sides. We have done so countless times since 2006 and especially post-2014, and we have succeeded to avert major conflicts and major escalations between both sides and to de-escalate at so many times, including and up to the 28th of September of this year, when mediation succeeded in reaching a deal between both sides. And obviously, while the parameters have shifted post the attacks of the 7th of October, we have immediately resumed our role on the 8th of October, reaching out to both sides and insisting that we start immediately with mediation, especially since we got the information that there are civilian lives at stake and lives at stake of the hostages, and of course, furthermore now with the current conflict. Our negotiating teams have been working day and night, 24/7, since more than 6 months now. The only time off they had is when the talks collapsed. And therefore, I think we have done all possible in this, because we had at the foremost in our priority list the lives of civilians that are going to be harmed in this. Every day there's a delay in reaching a deal, more lives are lost, and the lives of the hostages are put at further risk. And therefore we understand and we share the burden of the lives of these people on our shoulders, and we take it seriously. And from the top levels of leadership, we have invested time and effort in this, and the peace and security in the region is a concern not only for us but for all peace-loving people in this region. And we can never have peace and security for all of us in the region, for the Qatari people and the people in Israel and in Palestine and the rest of the region, unless we have venues for peace, which this mediation that we are leading is, of course, paramount to right.
Is Israel making every effort to fulfill its obligations?
I mean, we have voiced our frustration with the commitment level of both sides. We are reassessing our role as mediators as a result of our feelings towards the seriousness of both sides in reaching a deal. We believe that a lot more can be done from both sides, and that we are doing all that we can right now, and we need more pressure on both sides in order to reach a deal.
You're saying both sides, but the head of the CIA and Secretary Blinken accused Hamas and blaming them for this situation right now, for the absence of the ceasefire. And there appears to be a lot of compromise made by the Israeli side in order to reach a deal. Can you relate to that?
Let me tell you what I can tell you about the negotiation process itself and where it is at right now. Where it is at right now is that we are in need of more show of commitment from both sides and more concessions from both sides, not only from the Israeli side or from Hamas' side. I think there are a lot of hard decisions we're making. Any mediation undertaken, especially under parameters like the ones we are living through right now, will be difficult negotiations, will be difficult concessions from both sides. And every day there's a delay, further risk is to civilians from both sides. And I hope that those taking decisions on both sides will understand that every day they spend not reaching a deal means further risk to the hostages and further risk to civilians in Gaza.
Do you believe Netanyahu is not understanding this statement?
I won't comment on individuals on this, because I think this is bigger than individuals. But what I can tell you is that there is a lot of political posturing. There is a lot of very narrow political calculations that are impeding the negotiation process, impeding
from the Israeli side.
Again, from both sides. And we have taken very clear positions on this, and we showed very clear statements on this, because we believe that this is not the time for political calculation. This is not the time for political posturing. This is not the time to put your own personal political future ahead of the lives of the hostages and the civilians in Gaza. With the terrible situation, humanitarian situation we have right now, we hope that all those involved, just like the officials here in Qatar, would have only one thing on the top of their mind, which is the humanitarian loss and the humanitarian cause within ending this conflict.
If Israel will operate in Rafah, how this might affect the negotiations?
Obviously, every escalation that takes place on the ground has its bearing on the negotiation process. And we have said that 10% of the land in Gaza houses now more than 1.7 million people. No military operation can be a safe operation that would protect the lives of civilians within these kind of parameters. The humanitarian situation in Rafah is already dire. We are talking about 6 weeks away from famine in Gaza. People are dying needlessly because of lack of access to water, lack of access to sanitation, lack of access to medical services. Children are dying in their incubators, and kids and women are dying just because they don't have access to clean water and to sanitation. And therefore, talking about an attack on Rafah in these parameters would mean a grave humanitarian disaster like none other before, and obviously it will have its effect on the negotiation. But again, we are also talking here about the security and the safety of the hostages. Every escalation on the ground puts hostages at further risk, and we need to give the priority right now to getting the hostages back to their families and protecting civilians.
Some Israelis will say Qatar has the leadership of Hamas, the terror organization, who is responsible for the most horrific attack on Jews since the Holocaust.
The easy decision would have been to simply raise our hand and say nothing can be done about this and leave it as it is. And this is, I would have believed that the biggest mistake would have been not to have a mediation process post the 7th of October. We are having the most difficult discussions over ending this conflict, over getting the hostages back home. But the alternative to this would be not having these discussions at all, not having any chance of the hostages returning to their families or protecting the lives of the civilians in Gaza. Having this role as mediator requires a lot of actions from our side as mediators. We have never been passive mediators. When we were asked by the United States to open this channel of communication with Hamas, of course there was a calculated risk that Qatar would have to take in a lot of heat as a result of playing that role of hosting Hamas here in Doha, but that is what enabled us to hold all of these mediations that took place all throughout the years since 2006 to today. And right now, the only reason we have this office here in Doha is for the mediation process itself that is undergoing right now. So we feel surprised that those who are benefiting from the process itself and benefiting from the mediation itself right now and are engaged in that negotiation would criticize Qatar for hosting the political office here in Doha when it is the only venue for holding that mediation.
You've been active also regarding the transferring of aid, of money towards Gaza. What is your answer to those who say Qatar transferred hundreds of millions of dollars to Gaza, and by that Hamas have enough money in order to facilitate terror?
Let me be very clear on the aid that was delivered to Gaza. First of all, as I said, we were never passive mediators. In every mediation that succeeded, that Qatar participated in, we paid into peace and stability. If you look at the negotiations between...
Which is something that didn't happen. There is no peace and no stability.
While we were doing all these countless mediations between Hamas and Israel, we also committed to the reconstruction in Gaza, because providing the people with hope, providing the people with a chance to live naturally and for prosperity is the only way to get out of the cycle of violence. And we have been able to avert war so many times as a result of having such aid. But let me tell you very clearly, all of that aid was part of a mechanism that included complete Israeli oversight, complete Israeli vetting, even of the families that received the $100 a month aid through this process. That was done under the oversight of the Israelis with complete vetting from the Israeli side. And we are appalled by the fact that some of the officials who actually worked on the process itself and sometimes came to Doha and demanded that Qatar increase its aid to Gaza or continue its aid to Gaza when Qatar was reconsidering, that these same officials would go out and accuse Qatar of sending that money to Hamas. This money, the checkpoints were there, they were established by the Israeli government. The money actually went physically to Israel. The money that went there for buying the fuel was actually sent through Israel. The fuel was bought in Israel and then moved to Gaza in a secure manner and immediately plugged into the grid. The aid that went in also went in with oversight from international organizations, and there was a clear vetting process for all the families, and there was a clear reporting back mechanism to the Israeli agencies. And therefore, there were the checkpoints and the guarantees in place to make sure that none of that money has went anywhere else. This was done for humanitarian reasons, and the lack of peace and security that we have here today is not a result of sending aid to the people of Gaza. It's a result of the lack of commitment to peace from both sides.
I want to show you a statement of one of the parliament members just days ago, saying very harsh comments regarding Jews and regarding Israel.
لن يكون هناك سلام ولا تفاوض مع الكيان الصهيوني لسبب واحد فقط، لأن عقيدتهم أصلا لا تعترف بالتفاوض بل بالمراوغة ونقض العهود والكذب. وها هي المبادرة العربية مضى عليها الآن أكثر من 22 عاما ولم يعترفوا بها، فقط يعترفون بشيء واحد وهو القتل، فهم قتلة الأنبياء.
And I wonder, does this represent the Qatari public nowadays?
Let me be very clear on this. The individual in question is an elected member of the Shura Council here in Qatar. His views obviously do not represent the views of the government of Qatar. Our views, especially regarding hatred, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all forms of racism and hatred have been very clear throughout the years. You know, Qatar is a multicultural society. You've been here in Qatar. Anybody who visits Qatar will understand that people of different faiths, backgrounds, national backgrounds or racial backgrounds will be over the place here in Qatar. So this multiculturalism is something that we celebrate, something that we believe in. There is a multitude of ways that we have shown this through the interfaith dialogue, through our hosting of the World Cup, and we believe in this. It is part of our identity, and I believe that the Qatari government positions have been very clear. You can read it in all of our statements and all of our positions all throughout the years, including our commitment to fighting hatred, working with international agencies and all the initiatives that have taken place throughout the years. So our positions on this are very clear, and I would ask those who are looking for Qatari positions to look for the official statements on this that can be found very easily on the, either on our websites or here in Doha.
Another obstacle regarding the relations between Israel and Qatar was the prohibiting of Al Jazeera. How do you prospect this act from the Israeli government?
Al Jazeera is an independent media outlet, and I'm sure as a journalist you value very highly your independence.
Israel tend to see it as a station that glorifies terror.
Again, I can't speak here on behalf of an independent media outlet. I would encourage, of course, direct engagement with Al Jazeera itself. I would love to see an interview between you and somebody from Al Jazeera to speak about this. But our positions on this very clear. We respect media freedom, and we hope that all the governments in the world would allow journalists such as yourself the freedom to act without any censorship.
To conclude, I wonder if you have a message to the Israeli public. You came forward with an unusual step to talk with us, an Israeli broadcast channel, and I wonder if you have something to address the Israeli public.
You know, in Qatar, this is a peace-loving country with a peace-loving people. Our history has shown throughout you know, the years how we have always believed in the cause for peace. We have always believed in dialogue, and we have always believed in being there for our friends and partners when need be. I think a lot of the misinformation and disinformation about Qatar has to do with ignorance and have to do with a lack of understanding of who we are and what we do. And through engagement, we hope to change that.
Dr. Majed al-Ansari, thank you for this interview, and I hope to see you soon in Tel Aviv or in Doha.
Thank you very much.